Let me tell you about ProHealthConnect.com. It's transforming healthcare payments, providing retailers a seamless process for over-the-counter and healthy benefit programs. By connecting retailers, health plans, and payment processors, ProHealth Connect creates one powerful, unified network. They empower independent grocers and pharmacies to accept health benefit cards without changing how they do business. With over 10,000 locations nationwide, helping more than 1.3 million people access the care and nutrition they need. Go to ProHealthConnect.com.
The left versus the right. Entertaining and informative. On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
It's the left versus the right. Right here on WABC 77, your favorite radio station. And, of course, it wouldn't be the left versus the right unless Jake Novak is here. But before we even get into, because I thought this week, it's not even the left versus the right, Jake. It's everybody versus everybody else. But we're going to get into that in a second. Meanwhile, right here on WABC, we are celebrating the 250th anniversary of this country with some little short radio snippets that we're going to be playing. This was Jake's idea, and so I'm sure he'll get a big raise in his next paycheck, and with it, he'll take me out to dinner. But before that time, Jake, why don't you just tell the listeners some of the great events that we're going to focus on when we celebrate the 250th anniversary and their meaning to the fact that we can even have this anniversary.
Well, that's very kind of you to ask me about it, Governor. So it won't, by the way, it won't just be on WABC. It'll be on all the affiliates for this station, all the worldwide news network broadcasts as well. And we're calling it Freedom 250, the decisions that made America. For those of you old enough like me to remember 1976 and how incredibly wonderful, I thought, the bicentennial coverage was that particular year. It was everywhere. It was ubiquitous. It was in children's cartoons. The old American flags were everywhere. A lot of history, but it was just basically moments in history. There was really no analysis of it, and that's fine.
And you know, now that you bring it up, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I would say most people, in fact, I can't think of anyone who refuted that we would have this bicentennial anniversary and all these different events, and it didn't break down on party lines or criticisms about what color the flag was or some of the, really crazy stuff that goes on now. And so I guess it will really be a good time to hearken back to when Americans, not just 250 years ago, knew how to celebrate our anniversaries, but even 50 years ago.
Yeah, and listen, it was a different country 50 years ago, but it was not a happy Pollyanna country either. We were just coming out of Watergate and the Vietnam War and all that kind of stuff. So the fact that the country was able to just focus on the celebration, I thought was really important, and I know we can do it again. But that leads me to explain these 30-second and 1-minute snippets that you'll be hearing every day, maybe even on the hour here and there, are not just dates in history, which I think are fine. It's fine to say, hey, this is the date that Washington crossed the Delaware, this is the date of the signing. That's all fine. But I'm doing something a little bit different, a quick analysis. So I'm looking at the decisions that were made, people who made decisions, individuals like, whether it's an Abraham Lincoln or someone you may not even know, who made a very important decision that led to something generally very positive for this country or something that certainly couldn't be forgotten. So, and it goes from things like things that presidents did to things that regular people maybe in business did, maybe someone in entertainment and culture. It's going to cover all these things. And in addition to those 1 minute and 30-second snippets that you'll hear throughout the days, again, maybe even on the hour, Sunday nights on many of these stations, certainly WABC, during my 7 to 8 p.m. show that I do, I will always dedicate at least one segment and sometimes an entire show to fleshing out one of those 30-second or 1-minute pieces. So, for example, this Sunday night, I'm going to flesh out a 30-second piece that's going to start running probably today, Saturday, or something like that, where I talk about the day that John F. Kennedy, when he was president, his father had a stroke. His father had a stroke in December of 1961. And up until that point, his father had been calling him dozens of times a day, telling him what to do, not letting JFK really do what he needed to do unbothered. And because of that stroke, Joseph P. Kennedy never spoke again. He wasn't able to talk ever again. And that changed the JFK presidency. His decisions that happened after that are decidedly different from his first year in office. So that's that's the kind of stuff I'm going to be doing. Just quick notes that maybe maybe you never learned in school, but you should, because they were very impactful.
Sons very much crave their father's approval and generally listen to their fathers and have a great deal of respect and caring. This is the one of the two people that helped bring you into the world. And I remember when I was governor, I thought I was going to get these same Joe Kennedy calls. My father made me call him.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's
good. I can't get the budget passed on time. Well, sounds like you have a problem. Well, yeah, Dad, but do you have a solution? Yeah. So I hope JFK is smiling down on the fact that I was able to eventually pass these budgets without having to whine or call my father. But Joe Kennedy, he was a nasty, and then 3 letters. He really thought he was running the country even when he was basically committing all types of illegal activity. And he's just lucky that he had a son that became president.
Yeah, we're lucky as a nation, and I think I'll do a separate one on this so that there's some context. We're lucky as a nation that FDR had Joseph P. Kennedy's number. He had his number. He knew exactly what he was about. He placated him by making him the U.S. ambassador to the Court of St. James, which is a very fancy way of saying he's the ambassador to the United Kingdom, and hoped to get him out of his hair. Like, just get over there, and you'll have a lot of fun with that as an Irish American being the ambassador to the British royalty.
Right.
It's kind of like he basically hoped to tantalize him with that and get him out of his hair.
And this was Roosevelt's first choice. His second choice would have been the South Pole.
Yeah, that's right. Would have rather sent him there. Nevertheless, Joseph P. Kennedy did try to push Roosevelt away from aligning against the Nazis. Joseph P. Kennedy had a lot of investments in Nazi Germany, and he didn't want the United States to be their enemy. Now, eventually, he got with the program.
Yeah,
of course.
But I did. What you just said, I did not know that.
Yeah. He eventually got with the program, but that was one of the reasons why Roosevelt got rid of him. Roosevelt and Churchill had a lot in common. They both had to get rid of people to make sure that the war effort against the Nazis could move forward properly. Churchill had to get rid of that useless King Edward VIII, who was a Nazi sympathizer and also just a general, worthless, also a 3-letter word. Got rid of him. He gave him this governorship in the Bahamas, some kind of job just to get rid of him. And so FDR had that in mind. But Joseph P. Kennedy, he really thought he was getting his revenge for having been exiled during the FDR years and the FDR Democrats. And he gets his son in there. And I think that a couple of the decisions that Kennedy was able to move forward for the better of the country, especially being, for one thing, the establishment of the Navy SEALs, the big 1963 tax cut, which, of course, he had to spend a lot of 1962 pushing for. I think he would have had a much harder time focusing on those goals if his father was still bothering him. We're still bothering him. And that didn't happen. He was able to get out of his father's influence in that way, and I think it was for the better of the country, in my opinion.
I agree completely. And if you read about JFK extensively, and there are no identifications, I submit that a lot of people would think he was a Republican president.
Yeah, read his inaugural address. It's a sharp tongue whipping of the Soviets. It's rough. He was a very, one of my pet peeves was that I was a senior in college. The movie JFK came out with Oliver Stone, and there's a lot to be questioned about the JFK assassination. I am not one of those people saying, "Oh, I think we know all the answers." I don't think we do. But the premise of Oliver Stone is that JFK was basically some kind of pacifist who never would have gotten us into more of a war with Vietnam, and that's why he was killed. That's where it falls apart. I'm sorry, there's no evidence of that. JFK was a staunch anti-communist, was interested in military intervention when necessary. The idea that he was just going to pull us all out of Vietnam, unlike what LBJ did, there's just no evidence of that. So again, that's, of course, I think our culture, our entertainment culture, very often gives us a wrong impression. By the way, sometimes that has a great power to give us good, real impressions about what really happened. But I think that movie in particular really gives people the wrong impression about JFK and his presidency.
So Jake, are you ready?
Yeah.
I actually know Oliver Stone.
Oh, yeah.
I've known him for about 10 years, off and on.
Yeah.
We have a mutual friend.
Okay.
So we, happened to, go to visit our mutual friend at the same time some point. And I think if he remade JFK, he would do it exactly the way he did it the first time. He really believes that JFK would have saved the free world and that nothing else would have occurred had an assassin's bullet escaped him in 1963. And he's compelled by this. And I think that the only reason that he hasn't tried to make sort of a sequel or something like that is that no one would give him the money for it. That's what I believe.
Well, I have a question for you because this to me is a troubling part of JFK's record. And it seems like that every year that passes, I'm more favorable for, in my opinion, of his presidency. But I'd like to get your opinion on JFK's two steps when it comes to civil rights. I think he talked a good game, but you really could argue that he didn't really make the efforts to make real changes on the ground that, of course, LBJ did. And that may have been not only because LBJ felt he needed it to get the left wing of the Democrat Party to nominate him to be president in his own right for the full term, but also because LBJ had experience with this already. He had already passed a civil rights bill in 1957 when he was majority leader. So how do you feel about JFK's civil rights record and when it really comes down to it?
I think JFK was your favorite speaker when, if you were one of the civil rights groups, and he would come and, bring the house down because he was an excellent speaker, and he'd take questions, and he was quick. He could answer questions, in a moment. And then as the people are driving home, they're thinking, but what did he do for civil rights? Like, he didn't mention anything he actually did for civil rights. And I also remember, and I think we might have talked about this a little last week, when I read that when Martin Luther King went to visit President Johnson, he thought he was going to get a lot of pushback or, yes, thank you, Dr. King, the door is on the left, on the way out, that kind of thing. But that Johnson opened the conversation saying, a lot of civil rights needs to occur, and you're going to get a lot of it done, and I'm going to get a lot of it done because it should be done by Southerners, and that they had a little pact between them that if there was any trouble, they would talk it out. But JFK, we have it today. The people who are great at speaking to audiences and great at making representations of what they're going to do and how peaceful it's going to be and all these different things. And you don't have to look further than the Gracie Mansion for that to be happening today, because nothing really gets accomplished. It seems that, and I know I'm straying a little bit, but this administration's whole philosophy is to tear down anything positive that anyone else is doing.
This reminds me of Barack Obama as well. I think it was Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, who said during the Obama presidency that considering his record and how things are going in the African-American community, if he were a white president, we would be picketing the White House every single day. Do you feel the same way? I mean, did Obama also talk a good game and not actually deliver for the black community?
I not only felt that, but in his first a couple of years, I was governor, and we would do these things, and we would, just want a little quote from the president, anything from the White House, nothing, and until Obama had reached some sort of agreement with some people, and when they finally called, it was ask me not to run for re-election. So I haven't forgotten that. Right. But on those issues, yes, he could leave audiences, barely able to breathe because of the strength of his oratory. But when he got back home, he just went back to sleep and got up and became, what he had been. And I am frankly surprised that more people haven't talked about that, after the fact.
This is one of the things that frustrates me the most about politics and really our culture. we are living in a culture now, and in a political culture as well, where words are really valued over actions. And I think that social media has made this worse. I understand that you can't always just show your resume. People, I'm in the communications business, so I'm certainly happy that people who can communicate clearly, and I think I communicate clearly and in an interesting way, have sway. But I wouldn't feel comfortable saying any of the things I say, especially the things I say with conviction, if I didn't feel I had the record to back it up, And it's so sad to me that we really continue to do this. We continue to applaud people for how well they speak, which is certainly an important part of the job. The people need to understand why things are being done. People need to be motivated. We were just talking about FDR. FDR, it's really good that he was a good speaker, and it's really good he did the fireside chats because he took over as president an incredibly isolationist country, and he needed every one of those years in office before December 7th, 1941, to mobilize the country and to make it clear why we needed to get involved in World War II. So, words are important. But, of course, he had the actions to back it up. He did Lend-Lease. He started to rebuild the military. We weren't caught with our pants down on December 7th. We were with the attack on Pearl Harbor, but we had already a military that was somewhat ready to go, and it didn't take long to get into the field. But I'm just really very, very disappointed that our culture continues to celebrate people who talk a particular game, and then you look at their particular actions. This goes beyond politics. I'm a father of 2 daughters, and granted, I'm not a woman, but when I see things like, for example, the Real Housewives show, and the way that the creator of that show, Andy Cohen, is celebrated by women all over the country because he says these cute things, and they like to hear him schmooze. He's an incredible misogynist, and his record shows it. Have you seen any of these shows? Have you watched them? They portray women in the most denigrating physical and emotional light that I've ever seen in my life. If anyone else were running those particular programs,
there'd be a boycott.
There'd be a huge boycott.
Now,
that's a feeling I have.
What
I just
network
hate that.
is carrying this, Jake?
I think it's on Bravo. It's it's on Bravo. Yeah, we got the nod. Yeah, all the Real Housewives shows. They in addition to the anti-Italian American stereotypes. Thank God, from my own point of view, that the Real Housewives thing they wanted to do on Long Island with a lot of Jewish characters didn't fly because that was filled with a lot of anti-Semitic stuff. And I think that there are some anti-black tropes running through the Real Housewives of Atlanta as well. But it's women. The men on the shows are sometimes kind of schmendricks. At worst they're sort of out of it, but they're never portrayed in that horrible, negative, seedy, disgusting light that the women are. And the way that they make them up on these shows, the makeup and the outfits are over the top. They look like
rivalry, the competition.
Yeah, it's misogyny. It really is.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it's been allowed to go on. To this point.
And it's interesting that this Andy Cohen, who is a guy who doesn't like women. I'm sorry. And the fact that he's gay is not important. There's plenty of straight men who don't really like women either or respect them, as we know. Graham Platner. We know that as a fact, and we should talk about that next. But the thing is, my friends, look, especially if you have young daughter, this is not helping the whole self-esteem movement in this country at all. And I think that that's overblown too. But this kind of stuff, actions being valued less than words, is not a society I want to live in. But that seems to be what we're doing right now, and I don't like it.
Well stated, Jake. We're going to take a little time out for our commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the rifts within the Republican Party, the Republicans that voted against President Trump, some of his ideas, why that is generally the case in the Democratic Party as well. But first, we're going to take a little time out for a commercial break, and we'll be back with Graham Platner.
The Left versus the Right on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Almonte's Key Food, proudly serving communities throughout Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island for over 30 years. When you shop Key Food, you'll always find fresh products, great weekly specials, and exceptional personalized service. Visit at any of their Key Food stores at 8235 153rd Avenue, Lindenwood, New York, 935 Rosedale Road, Valley Stream, New York, and 6620 Avenue U, Brooklyn, New York.
The Left versus the right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back on the left versus the right. Jake Novak is with us. David Paterson, who I guess is me, is as well. And what I thought we were going to talk about in the first segment, but it went so well, is what's going on in Washington. It seems that every other day now, the president is losing votes for some of his projects, and his ballroom's in trouble. His fund for people who he feels were attacked on January 6th has been thrown out. And however, I don't see that there is a major rift between him and the Republicans in the House and in the Senate, because in the end, they're basically still following the same playbook. And the one thing I wanted to say before I hear you talk about this, Jake, is when I was in the state Senate and we were Democrats, we would always lose. I mean, motion to adjourn, we'd still lose. Motion to accept the record of last week's session, nothing ever got anywhere. And we felt at the time that the person who was making our life so difficult was the former governor, Mario Cuomo. Now, his son, who is also a former governor, Andrew Cuomo, premiered a motion picture, or have you will. It is a kind of a covering a lot of his careers, a documentary, and it was very good. But we did have these issues, and when these issues would come up, and I hate to admit this now because I hope I've matured since then, we would not come to session. We would keep the debates going longer and longer just to annoy the Republicans, and particularly to get the message back to former Governor Cuomo. In the end, he won most of the battles. But that's what I see as this little scuffle that's gone on over the past week in Washington between the president and the Republican legislators.
Well, I think the listeners need to understand that for a decent number of establishment Republicans in Washington, the era that they missed the most is, I would say, 2014 to 2015. Those were the year, and maybe a couple of years before that. The Republicans, when they had a majority in Congress and there was a Democrat president, they loved that.
Yeah.
Because I was just talking about how words being valued more than actions. Can't really expect that much change when you don't have the White House.
I think that was in my administration, wasn't that the case?
Yeah, I mean, they liked it. It started with Bill Clinton because, again, there might be a lot of listeners here who forget that it was just taken for granted for more than 40 years that Congress would always be controlled by the Democrats and the White House would go back and forth. Then under Bill Clinton, when you had the Newt Gingrich Contract for America election in 94, you've had now a back and forth situation in the Congress as well as the White House. It's suddenly become much more of a wild card and a free agent, which I think is better for democracy. But that said, the Mitch McConnell types, many others that I could mention, loved that scenario. They could go on Fox News, they could do all their fundraisers, and they never had to actually do anything else. And it was such a and their life in Washington was fantastic. And Trump not only overturns the apple cart because he has policies and beliefs that are different than old school establishment Republicanism, in particular his opposition to illegal immigration and tightening borders and tightening immigration. That's something that establishment Republicans have always liked because of their relationship with corporate America, who want the slave labor of illegal immigrants working for them, at least, whether either directly or indirectly in lowering wages. But it goes well beyond that. It's at that comfy lifestyle that they missed. And it's one of the reasons why you have a handful of these Republicans voting against, for example, the SAVE Act. They would rather not overturn the apple cart and take away their their colleague Democrats some of the things that they like to rely on, because there's an unwritten agreement. You don't take away the things that we always get, and we won't take away the things that you won't always get. By the way, that's the biggest reason why the South Carolina Senate, heavily Republican, decided not to get rid of Jim Clyburn's district in South Carolina, the one racially gerrymandered district in South Carolina that guarantees his election. Because Jim Clyburn is just about the second or third most powerful member of the House. They know that if they take away his district, there will be a hell of a lot to pay. They'll make him into a big martyr. It'll be very, very ugly. And they don't want, in the end, they would win, but they don't want to absorb it. They'd rather go to the cocktail parties, go along to get along. And that's not what the American voters want, but that's what this political class wants. And that's why we don't have the SAVE Act, even during a week now where we're several days after this California primary, and we still don't even have 70% of the ballots counted, which is a disgrace. It's more than a disgrace. It's fraud. It's fraud. I'm sorry. It's incredible that this is going on.
I mean, you know when your election is going to occur. You know what date it will that it will be, and you have a pretty good idea of how many people are going to vote. You also have a very good idea from the previous elections of where they're going to vote. So you've got everything organized for you to go through and make sure that the process goes unimpeded. And as much as, usually when I heard people say elections were fixed and that kind of thing, I just thought, look, elections fixed means you lost. But no, now there's a pretty good portion of evidence that there are dirty tricks, if you will, being played at the polls in these places. And then you can't count the number of the people that voted. Now you don't have to wait for anything. All you have to do is open up the machine and count them. And here we are on Saturday, the 6th of June. And have they opened the ballots yet?
Yeah, I mean, this is right. And Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida made the point yesterday on Friday saying that they automatically, once the mail-in ballot is received, that number is logged. So they know right away how many votes they have to count, even on election night. We don't even know yet how many votes there are left to count in California. This is a disgrace. This is clear cheating. And the Save America Act would have a lot to do with fixing this, and there weren't even enough Republicans to really get this through. I mean, eventually they did get a vote passed late Thursday night going into Friday where they finally got enough votes to make it happen if J.D. Vance would break the tie.
Right.
But still, this is something that 86% of the American people want. And it's a great example of something that I talk about a lot. And my friend Scott Rasmussen, who's a pollster, also the co-founder of ESPN, the man has a lot of talents.
He does.
Amazing guy. He talks about 80-10-10 issues, that there are a number of issues that 10% of the most partisan political class people care about versus the other 10, so it's 20% of them that and that split 10-10. And the rest of the America, that 80% wants it. And sadly, that 20% of the political class has so much power over the rest of us. And it's not a conspiracy theory. It's not there's plenty of problems with foreign money and stuff like that. I've talked about that on this program. But this is our own people betraying the clear will of the American people on this particular issue. And I would strongly suggest it would be even more impactful if a Democrat did this, but that I think is too much of a stretch. But any Republican running for president needs to make, just as like President Trump made closing the borders his signature issue, I think voter integrity and voter ID should be the signature issue of any Republican candidate for president. That will be very helpful to him or her. It'll be even more helpful if a Democrat does it, by the way, if they're able to get around the DNC, which would probably try to assassinate them.
Now that you've said it twice, Jake, I'm taking it under consideration.
Yeah, you should do it.
I may have to go back into the fray.
Yeah, because it'll get you very...
Hanging out here with you at ABC was, I'm living the life, but maybe I've got to go back in the battle. And in all seriousness, you don't have a democracy if the elections aren't run right. So whoever would oppose this could only be doing it because they know something that we don't know.
Yeah, and you also, as I've said many times on this program before and other programs on WABC and our affiliate stations, it's also not a legitimate election if you use mail-in ballots, because mail-in ballots are not secret ballots.
Yeah, how could they?
If you want to get into a fight with someone about fraud or ballot harvesting or the voting machines being screwed with, good luck with that. It's very hard to prove. It's not easy. It's not easy to prove, and I would love to see evidence of it. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying that's a difficult argument, and you will get everyone's hackles up. There is no objective argument against what I just said. Mail-in ballots are not secret ballots, period. And elections that don't have secret ballots are not legitimate, period. I learned that in 5th grade. I learned that what happened in the South after Reconstruction when people tried to vote for Republicans because they put the boxes differently. If you had to put your vote in the Republican box, and they did it at work so your boss saw you, so you either got your head cracked, fired, or both. And I don't know what's going on with these mail-in ballots. Is there a guy in a wife-beater T-shirt looking over his wife or girlfriend telling her to vote in a certain way? I don't know. And that's even if the right person is filling out the ballot, let alone someone else who might be filling it out. So honestly, folks, that's the argument. For those of you who are listening, who are into your Facebook and X battles with your friends and neighbors, please take my advice. Listen to me carefully. Mail-in ballots are not secret ballots and thus not legitimate. End of story.
Speaking from experience, I have to have over the years mailed in, I'd say, somewhere between 15 and 20 payments to my credit card companies, and then they never seem to get there.
Yeah.
And I never thought about why, but just even in the process itself, even if the process is being totally objective, things get lost. Mail carriers drop their bags, and then they have to pick up all the letters that are in it and that kind of thing. It's just not a sufficient way at this point in history to be doing much business in the first place, because so many things are online now, but also to monitoring elections so that they're fair. And I think overwhelmingly Americans feel that way.
Well, it also turns out that the son of Sam was your postman, so that may have been your problem, right?
Yeah, that could have been a problem. He was always a problem.
Just kidding about that. But no, I mean, this is, to me, it's very sad that we're even having this conversation about the mail-in ballots and things like that. For those who really have disabilities and have a hard time getting to the polls, there are other ways, more legitimate ways, to have your vote counted. I don't have a problem with the early voting, in-person early voting. Okay, a week or two before the election, that's fine by me. Granted, someone said, well, what if a great big scandal happens the days before the election? That's not a good enough argument for me to take. So you can do early in-person voting, and if you are a U.S. soldier stationed overseas, you can vote on a secure laptop at the base. Or same thing if you're a diplomat overseas, you can vote in a secure laptop.
Right.
Which, by the way, I've seen done at consulates here in the U.S. for foreigners. I've seen that. I didn't look at who they voted for, but I saw that they were doing that. And for those who are literally in a forward position under fire, you have other things to worry about than voting. We'll get you next time. Honestly, that's like saying, well, someone's in a coma, they couldn't vote. Well, yes, that they have a bigger concern than voting, believe it or not. So to me, this is a very simple issue to fix. I am very much in favor of President Trump's efforts to curtail mail-in balloting, and it's a real stain on our republic that we've allowed this to get where it is. And when we get real historians, it'll take another 30 years before we get rid of the Trump deranged historians and get real historians back. I think that they'll agree with my conclusion.
I think that it is one of those situations where you can't let the personalities involved sway your thinking. If President Trump woke up tomorrow and said, I've changed my mind, I think mail-in ballots would be fine. There would be some people who would go with him because it's him, but it would be wrong. And just in that situation would be the opposite of what really should be going on, which is that I got to give him credit here, realized how dangerous the voting ballot system is and wants to change it. And in changing it, it's not like they're going to put, U.S. Marshals in front of every polling precinct, but it's just to make sure that people go in and that their choice was actually recorded. And we're going to make sure that our choice was recorded here. Jake, but before we go to a break, do you have a thought on that?
Well, I think it's just there. Right. I mean, we don't want to see cops and huge law enforcement show up at the ballot box. That could be intimidating for people. I understand that. But until you get rid of the mail-in ballots and until you require real ID, then that's what you're going to get. That's what you're going to get.
Yeah. Real quick, I went to vote by myself for the first time, maybe ever, but maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. And I explained to them I have a disability. I need someone to help me. And they wouldn't help me.
Oh,
then
wow.
all of a sudden, this man comes out the back and he says, well, what the blank are you all doing? Is somebody going to help this man vote? He's registered.
Yeah.
So he took me and I voted. But believe me, it was an unnerving situation. It'll also be unnerving when I get fired for not getting the commercials out. So let's take one, and we'll be back with the left versus the right after this.
The Left versus the Right on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Left versus the Right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back on the left versus the right, and somehow, Mr. Novak and myself let 2 stanzas of this program pass without mentioning the name that's being mentioned all over the world right now. So I'm going to say a name, Jake, and then you start talking. Graham Platner.
Well, I want to start with an admonition. Everyone listening, I want you to take this Graham Platner story and put it in between your teeth and not let it go for years to come. I want the Graham Platner thing to be everything that the Very Fine People hoax, the overblowing of what January 6th was a hoax, the Brett Kavanaugh hoax, all those things weren't real. This is real. We have a real Nazi sympathizer, woman, I think, at least harasser, sexual
Abuser.
harasser, if not an assaulter as well, or assailant, that's the word, guy in place here. And more and worse than that, here's the thing that really gets me, Governor. Now, let's say you believed the Very Fine People hoax, which was a hoax. I mean, I saw it live, and I saw him make it very clear that he was not talking about the neo-Nazis and the KKK people, and the fact that it was edited unethically is still very much a craw, it sticks in my craw. But
Yeah.
let's say you were a Republican who voted for President Trump and you believed that hoax. And I could understand you not really feeling that great about publicly denouncing him because you still voted for him and maybe you felt like other than this was not something that you believed. I get it. On the other hand, this thing with this Graham Platner, it will cost these leading Democrats who continue to back him absolutely nothing. You know who's voted for Graham Platner? No one. He hasn't won any election or any primary yet. He's certainly not president of the United States. He's not even officially the nominee yet. There is nothing to be lost in saying I'm not going to support him. John Fetterman has said he's not going to support him, but Elizabeth Warren, Ed Markey, Senator Chuck Schumer, shame on him, and so many other names, Chris Coons, AOC, they're doing one of two things. This baloney line that the DNC has told anyone who's feeling skittish about to say, oh, I haven't been following it. They're literally still saying that on camera. This has been the number one political story in the country for quite some time. And AOC on Wednesday literally said, or Thursday, oh, I haven't waded into it yet. Cory Booker tried that line a couple of days before, or maybe a week before.
He said he hadn't looked into it?
He said, I haven't really been following it. Just total lies.
What was he following?
Yeah, I know. Then the ones who are saying, well, now we're still supporting him. It's very easy. This isn't like, this guy's not your president. This guy's not even your elected senator yet. You have nothing to lose and quite a bit to gain in rescinding any endorsement or saying you won't support him. And yet they won't do it. So if you're listening out there and you're a conservative and a Republican, from now on, I want you to treat this like all those other scandals that they've tried to trump up against Trump and his supporters in spades. I want you to say, well, I would discuss this with you, but Graham Platner. I want you to say Graham Platner just as much as Very Fine People hoax and January 6th and rapist or whatever they say about Trump. Over and over again. Make it into your mantra because the people who you'll be pushing back on deserve every bit of it. This guy is not only toxic, But there's so much to gain for Democrats if they stand up against him. There wasn't much to gain for Republicans if they stood up against Trump, and that's been shown in election after election. And they still won't do it. This is really scary, but you got to use this. If you don't use this and you decide, oh, I don't want to get that mixed up in that kind of stuff, I don't want to be like them, well, you're going to have
handed to you.
Yeah, here it is.
It's handed to you. And, I'm a Democrat. I think now, I don't know what I'd get called, but I always saw myself as a moderate Democrat. I was strong on a lot of issues that you probably would anticipate. But I've come to the conclusion that those names that you mentioned, the U.S. senators, would support Rasputin if he came back and did the things that he was known to have done in those days, as long as he was a Democrat and as long as he was elected for something. I really believe they'd get behind him. There's something about thinking, it's almost like you're imagining that you're doing something that's really exciting, like the civil rights movements or, years ago, voting rights for women or something like that. Real causes that really meant something. And it really required people to put their lives on the line sometimes, but definitely put their reputations on the line to try to do the right thing. I want to know what it is about Mr. Platner that is allowing even our home senator from taking that position.
I'm going to say something here that I really mean to say, and I could have said it on any one of the other shows we've done together after all this time. But and it's not a rhetorical question. You know, Governor, why you're not in active politics anymore and in a political office? It's because you're a good person. I'm sorry to say this, but we keep asking.
We've taped this, right?
Yeah.
So I can play it back for my family?
Yes, we should. We keep asking the wrong question in America. I hear it all the time. Why can't we get better people to run for office? It's the wrong question. The question we should be asking is, why have we allowed a political culture that attracts bad people? If you're a bad person in America today, an adult who's a bad human being,
you have a home.
You are very attracted to politics. It's a world where, again, words mean more than actions. It's a world where you can be as nasty as you want to be, and 50% of the public will still support you. It's a world where you don't have to do anything. Has anyone heard from Kirsten Gillibrand? She did speak out about Platner, and she's also refusing to back down and supporting him. But where has she been for the last 6 years? I haven't heard hide or hair of her. Seen hide or hair of her. She's not. It's amazing. You don't have to do anything. It's a great world for bad people. And when I see people like you, and there was a senator from Colorado years ago, 30 years ago, who dropped out of the world of politics after one term because he realized this was going to take his soul away. He ended up becoming president of the University of Colorado. Good guy.
Wow.
There's a lot of examples of this. I think that people who do a term or two, or especially in a very prominent office, time and again, the ones who end up doing something else after that by their own choice tend to be amazing people. So you're too good a human being to be in office right now. I really believe that. And I'm not just saying that as a joke. It's something that I found to be really true. And we're going to get a lot. We should be asking ourselves, how come there haven't been more Graham Platners out there running for office? Because we've created an electromagnet for people like them in our politics.
I'm actually going to get together with some Democrats who, held in good regard by not just the public, but people, Republicans and Democrats. And we're going to start talking about how do we push back against this scourge that is just ruining every opportunity we have in this country. And it makes it so easy for our political opponents, who I see as the people who are just like us, but vote a different way, from controlling everything, because we've got to drag Graham Platner around with us. And it's embarrassing. It's in a way, it's almost embarrassing that we're even talking about this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just so well settled, you would think, in the minds of people who are reasonable. And then you have people who've done very well with their lives and their careers, and they're out here supporting this bastard.
I used to live in Maine. Maine was my first real job in TV. I was a producer of the evening news at WVII in Bangor, Maine. in 1995. And even then, there were certain things that are now very evident in the state that I saw beginning to happen. First of all, it's an aging state. Their population there is old. Young people are leaving. They have a population issue, which is why they've also had a Somali immigrant issue there, just like Minnesota does. The common ground being these are cold weather states. People leave. It's the agrarian, outdoorsy type life is not something that a lot of young people are picking up from their parents and earlier generations. They're desperate for bodies. They need bodies paying into those Medicare and Medicaid, withholdings on their paychecks. They need people to do home care. They need home health care aides, even if they're very lightly trained. It's one of the reasons why Susan Collins was so wishy-washy on Obamacare. She saw right away that what Obamacare really was a Medicaid expansion. That's all it was.
That's basically it.
And she knew, we're a Medicaid state. We're a state that needs it. And that's why she was suddenly broke ranks on that. So I'm not surprised that this is where we've come. This is what we've come to in a state like Maine. But there's a lot of other Maines out there too. Okay, there's a lot of other states like that. It's not a lot of these are rural states. And as you know from everyone listening from your elementary school educations, it doesn't matter how small your state is, you still get 2 U.S. senators.
Yep.
Right? You might only have 1 congressperson but in the House, but you get 2 senators. And so it becomes a powerful situation. And it's just incredible. But just remember, not only are these Democrats supporting him and endorsing him, but you have people like Bernie Sanders going on and schlepping up to support him. Elizabeth Warren standing with him and giving a little shot in the arm, saying he's my kind of guy.
Did he give her a little shot in the arm?
Yeah, I wish she had given him a real shot. Sodium, whatever is used in lethal injection. That would have been good. But just bad news. This is an incredible embarrassment. And again, I say this, and a lot of people say well, they just want power. Even if they just wanted power, don't they have the long view here and understanding that if they denounce this guy, it will be good for them in actually the short run. If Elizabeth Warren had come out, I think she's lost her opportunity. Yesterday they asked her 3 times point blank, and she said, "Are you worried about all these scandals?" And she said, "You know what I am worried about? I'm worried about the Iran war." I mean, she just literally wouldn't. By the way, a lot of the problem here, Governor, is the news media. By the way, I give every journalist who does these little in-person interviews with members of Congress, I give you the right to laugh in their face. Why are you not laughing? When she did that, you should go, okay, very fun, nice try.
Yeah, now,
instead of just looking like deer in the headlights, and you don't have to get nasty. Just say okay, nice try, Liz, really good job. But come on, can you be real here? And at first she'll push back and get angry about it. But if you continue to laugh in the face of ridiculous answers from people, it actually has an effect. I don't believe that laughing in the face of bigotry, all due respect to Mel Brooks, the producers, is not the reason why we haven't had another Holocaust. All right, I mean, he really thinks that. Well, I thought if I could make fun of the Nazis, we could stop. I'm sorry, that's not. First of all, it's not funny. The play was funny. I'm not saying the play wasn't funny, but that's not actually how it works. However, in real encounters with people who give you that kind of baloney, actually laughing at it, I think, will have an effect. But you got to do that. Fox News reporters, CNN reporters, start laughing in the face of ridiculous answers, please.
Well, certainly it's, after we talk about this, it's unbelievable that we're sitting here having this conversation with all the other problems we're having in the world because this jerk, and, I know people have been accused of things, and I know they denied wrongdoing, but it's really hard when it's 25 people accusing you. It's really a little hard to sidestep that. And remember, when he was asked, are there any more women that might come forward? And he said, yes, but I'm telling the truth. Don't believe them. So he's trying to cut them off before they even get to the microphone.
How many Republicans supported George Santos publicly when all these things came out about him? I think none, right? I mean, they overwhelmingly voted to expel him from the House.
Yeah.
And as much of a grifter as he is and was, I don't think he harmed anyone physically, or he certainly wasn't a Nazi. He was a crook, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
He was a scammer. Maybe some people lost their money from him, and if that's the case, I apologize to you. I don't mean to say that you weren't harmed, but you get my point. I'm talking about somebody here who's very belligerent, somebody here who may have physically harmed individuals, somebody here who has lied about an SS tattoo, the division of the SS that ran the death camps, the division of the SS that lined up and shot my great-grandmother and my great-uncles and aunts and just shot them. They didn't get the benefit of trying to survive Auschwitz. If you lived in Lithuania, Ukraine, or Russia, they just lined you up and shot you. Those are the people who did that to my family, and he lied about not knowing what that was all about. I mean, there's just nothing to be lost in abandoning this guy, and they won't do it. This is just as ruinous as supporting boys in the girls' locker room and supporting the open borders, and it's yet another example of my belief that there are foreign enemies of the United States supporting these Democrats, which is why they take these anti-American, against their own best self-interest positions. So, honestly, if you're listening to Democrats, it will actually help you. Forget about helping me. It'll help you if you denounce this guy, and you won't do it. You won't do it.
Absolutely. And by the way, was he being denounced for everything he did, or was he being denounced for what he, has denied?
Yeah, I mean, it's both. I mean, he's and also the way the New York Times watered down their own exclusive interview with some of his victims, which is just incredible.
So these weird titles. Next week we have to get into. We have no time to do it now. We're going to say goodbye, but next week we have to get into the characterizations of baby naming. I'm sure you've heard about this, and we'll talk about that next week, but I'm giving you a whole week to think about how to address that problem because I have not the slightest idea. This is David Paterson along with Jake Novak. It's been our pleasure to be with you from 3 to 4 here on 77 WABC on the left versus the right. Have a good weekend.
Thanks for listening to The Left versus the Right. You can hear The Left versus the Right Saturday afternoons at 4. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
On the biggest stage in the world, FanDuel is changing the game because sometimes your player gets subbed off and your bet goes with them. Not anymore. With FanDuel Super Sub, if your player's subbed out, your bet stays in. That's right. If your player leaves a match, your bet continues on with the substitute. So you're still in it until the final whistle. Visit FanDuel.com. Get started now. Let there be goals this summer on FanDuel.
21 plus select states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. 18 plus DCKYWY. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 1-800-MY-RESET. 888-789-7777. Visit ccpg.org/chat. Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org. Maryland. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. Call 800-327-5050. Massachusetts. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Text HOPE-NY in New York. Call 877-770-7867. Louisiana.
Visit FanDuel.com. Get started now. Let there be goals this summer on FanDuel.